Hi, welcome everyone. So, as Molly kindly introduced me, I am Jasmine Richards, the founder of StoryMix, the multi-award-winning inclusive fiction studio, and that's just a fancy way of saying we're a book packager, okay? But I like the word inclusive fiction studio. We tell stories that put kids of colour in the centre of narratives full of joy and adventure, and I emphasise the joy and adventure bit because for too often the only place where you'll find children of colour is in stories full of trauma or in historical stories full of trauma. We create pathways to publications for writers and illustrators from racially minoritised backgrounds. We're called StoryMix because stories built me. Stories took me from social housing in North London, big up Haringey, onto Oxford University, and then on to Penguin, which actually Oxford was great training for joining Penguin, in the early 2000s. On to work for Penguin, a fantastic book packager called Working Partners and Oxford University Press. I've also written for Disney and BBC. So basically, I've spent the last 20 years either editing stories for children or writing them. I'm also a mother, and in 2018, I went to the bookshop with my son, Zach, who was 5 years old at that point, and we stood there looking at the chapter books, and I could not find a single book that featured a child that looked like my son. And the real kicker, I'd edited many of those, I'd written many of those. I am one of the Adam Blades of Beast Quest, by the way. And I couldn't see him. So I decided to do something about it. I founded StoryMix. I decided that I would take the model of book packaging to accelerate the number of books on the shelf, to physically take up space on the shelf and represent children of colour authentically. People often tell me how brave or courageous I was to start StoryMix, to dedicate my time, my energy, resources, to build something with a goal of making a real difference. But what many don't realise is that StoryMix was a response to all of those times that I wasn't brave. More of that in a moment. I have a question for you first. What does being brave at work mean to you? Perhaps your idea of bravery is shaped by the books that we edit and design or market or sell, but does bravery always need to be a grand gesture, or can it sometimes just be an everyday action? Can it be found in the moments when we choose our values over creating added value for publishing corporations making record profits for their shareholders? Today I want to talk about how we, the children's publishing industry, need to be a little braver and face the situation we're in. The people in this room love stories. After all, it's our business to tell them, to sell them. But here's the thing, kids' storytelling also tells the story of us, the grown-ups, because it's not just who ends up on the page, it's about the decisions we make along the way, about who gets to write or illustrate those stories. For years, our industry has acquired and sold the same kinds of books because they felt safe. And by safe, I mean stories that fit neatly into categories that publishers are familiar with, ones that have a clear route to market because they can easily visualize the purchaser and believe that they know who the end reader is. Kids publishing is like a comfortable coat that you can shrug on with ease. Sometimes we fly in it, and we produce phenomenons. It's a coat that fits best an avatar who is white, middle class, able-bodied, and southern. It's an avatar that looks like this room. And so, of course, it feels comfortable. But here's the problem of comfort. It keeps us stuck. Comfort silences voices. Comfort means we're not making books that resonate with the kids the way we used to. Do we even know who our reader is? Data shows that well over half of 8 to 10-year-olds are not reading frequently. Could it be that we're missing out on readers because we stay within our comfort zones, even though all the paradigms have shifted for Gen Alpha. So I ask you, what voices are we silencing because they don't fit into our comfort zones? What ideas are we stifling because they don't fit our idea of proper books? And what stories could we tell if we were a little braver and stepped towards the unfamiliar, whether that's to do with themes, identity, or format? Be brave. We say that to kids when there's something big on the horizon, but brave can feel heavy. When people call me brave or courageous for starting Story Mix, I wince a little because I know the truth. I spent a lot of my career not being brave. And sure, sometimes I didn't feel safe enough to challenge the status quo or the micro or macro aggressions, but other times it was simply because it was the harder thing to do, and I chose the not very hard thing instead. The thing about not being brave is that it leads to regret, and regret sucks. It sucks worse than staying quiet, even when the world around you tells you it's safer to do so. I often think back to when I was a junior editor and a manuscript by a young black woman crossed my desk. It was a story of a child and her mother who struggled with personality disorder. A debut novel, it definitely needed work, and I loved it. But did I take it to acquisitions? No, I did not. I was afraid. I was afraid that I would crumble under the scrutiny that this book would face in an acquisitions meeting, afraid that it didn't fit the marketable mold, that it didn't look like anything else on our list. And I was so focused on building my career that I didn't want a failure on my ticket. So I held that book to a higher standard than others, and I regret not championing that book and that story that deserved to be told. There was another time I worked on developing a series with a young black boy as the hero. Concerns about its international appeal arose, and we ended up changing his ethnicity. I didn't speak up. I rationalized it as being pragmatic, thinking like a publisher. We need to sell books. That's what we're here to do, right? We're here to sell books. But deep down, I knew that I was compromising my values. There are benefits to regret. My regret became a catalyst for growth. It pushed me to be braver in my future decisions. But I wasn't taught how to be brave at work. And many of us haven't been. We're told to pipe down at school, to follow the rules. I expected courage from myself without ever learning how to be brave in the workplace. But I've worked out some stuff for myself over the years, and I want to share that. Understand the why and keep it front and center. My why is to serve the reader. My ambition, yes, is to make money doing so. But the why comes first. That's why at Story Mix we try and spend time with our readers. We ask them what they want to see. Recently, we ran something called Story Mix Academy in Tower Hamlets, and we asked the kids there to set up their own book packager from nose to tail. And at the end of the week, they had to present to me. So I was basically somewhere between a dragon and what's his face? Thank you. Yeah, apprentice guy. And they had such wonderful ideas rooted in their lived experience, okay? And that lived experience is they spend a lot of time at school, people. They want school stories. They want stories about rival schools. Sometimes I think we make it far more complicated than we need it to be. And this school had a population, 98% Bangladeshi community. They wanted a school story. So, remembering the why. If you're going to be brave at work, remember your why. The other thing that I figured out for myself over the last 20 years is trying new things. Oh, look at my slide. Oh, never mind. It was beautiful on my phone. It's to try new things. There's a concept in nature called the edge of chaos. Don't panic, okay? It's called the edge of chaos. It's where systems and structures in nature, like rivers and ecosystems, butt up against each other, and they work out how to achieve balance and turbulence. And it's in this space that the ground is the most fertile. And what I would say in terms of creativity is that's where we need to be. That's where we need the courage to live, to allow for growth and adaptation. It's in that space that we take chances on the new, the untold, the stories that push boundaries, where we let go of comfort and step into creativity, embracing voices that didn't fit into neat boxes and taking risks on stories that make us and our readers think differently. By stepping into this space, it requires bravery. It means navigating conflict and uncertainty. It's a skill we need to develop, just like any other professional competency. At StoryMix, we're doing just that. We're launching a micro-publishing endeavour with the help of the wonderful UCLAN, who are brilliant disruptors in the publishing space. We're publishing a standalone middle grade book for the Christmas season of 2025, experimenting with high-end formats of Kickstarter and publishing for trade channels at a different price point. We're collaborating with an indie bookseller to create an immersive experience, a Santa's Grotto, where for the price of the ticket you get the book and you get to meet Santa. Please hear me when I say I never wanted StoryMix to be a publisher. I'd worked in publishing long enough to know that I didn't want to have to deal with the price of paper. I didn't want to know what a KPI was, never did, okay? But we're going to have to be brave and try new things, because brave is not knowing the outcome and having a go anyway. Be brave. In 2020, we had Black Square Summer. After the murder of George Floyd, the industry rushed to spotlight Black voices, stories, and creators. For a moment, it seemed like publishing was ready for a change. At StoryMix, we leaned into that momentum. We sold books, we launched careers. Many of us who finally got a seat at the table began to wonder, though, if we were actually a menu item, and a seasonal one at that. As time went on, those doors that seemed wide open have started to close. This isn't just in publishing, it's in TV, it's in theatre, it's even in venture capital funding for Black and female founders. The moment of opportunity is already slipping away. StoryMix is venturing into publishing to safeguard our stories, to keep fighting for what matters, even when the market shifts back to safe. And here's the hard truth, the industry is playing it safe again. But courage isn't about seizing a moment when it's easy, it's about sustaining momentum long after the hashtags and the headlines have faded. It's continuing to champion voices when the spotlight is gone. Bravery isn't about one summer. It's not a trend. It's about holding the door open and ensuring the opportunities we create today don't disappear tomorrow. This whole keynote has been about being brave. I'm going to be brave today and tell you we are going backwards. After the promises and platitudes of Black Square Summer, we're regressing. Publishing houses are sticking to what feels safe and familiar, and in our industry, which often moves as a herd, the rollback is breathtakingly swift. And I get to see it because I sell to all of you. You might think you're acting in silos, making individual decisions day to day, but when you pan out, you're all moving in the same direction. So ask yourself, what stories are you willing to fight for? What risks will you take? Because we have a choice. We don't work in publishing for the money, do we? We have a choice every day about what we publish and who we publish for. Be brave.